How's
Hello.
it going?
Hey, hello. How you doing, man? What's going on?
Good, good. How's everything?
All right. Yeah, this is like to welcome all my subscribers today. We got a special guest that I'm gonna put y'all in tune with. Today we got a Hunterman on the line.
How's it
How you
going,
doing?
folks?
How you doing, Hunterman? Hope
Good,
all is
good. How you doing,
all
Hellcat? What's cooking?
hope all is well with you and your family, man.
Everything's good, man. Hanging in there, surviving like everybody else. How you been?
Yeah, I'm taking it light myself, best as I can. So let's get right into this. Let's get right into it, man. What's your where you from?
Well, I was born and raised from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah,
Shout,
I'm a Latino, just like everybody else. We came
shout
from the
out,
hood, from the streets.
shout out, shout out to New York City. And
Yep, New York City.
I was shocked to find out on one of our talks you grew up in my same hood, but that's a whole nother story. Farragut Projects, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So yeah, but go ahead. I'm not cutting you off. Go ahead back into your history and the dogs in New York.
Yeah, I was born and raised in New York. I started with the dogs like everybody else did. You go down to the park playing handball. You used to see all the people with the dogs, and
Right,
you
right.
get that interest in the animals later on. And as time goes by, you learn a lot, and you transition to many different stages in this dog world. And but you never forget where you came from. That's the main thing.
Well, hold on. You said something important that I got to touch on, being that we from the same area. Now, the different stages of these dogs. Did you find it back in the days there was more mutts running around the city back then?
I wouldn't say much, but there were more pit bulls back then all over the place. We really didn't even have papers like that. A lot of people just had dogs, breeding dogs, and just everybody had a pit bull. Every doorstep had a pit bull. But as time goes by and you get into the dogs, then you tend to realize there's more to it. But it was a big thing back in the early '60s, '70s, and the '80s. It was like a popular thing.
Right, right. Well, when I say that much, I'm saying my fascination with the dogs. Like I said, when I was younger, growing up, and like you said, the late '70s. To me, I seen a lot of mutts, and that's what always sparked my interest in the dogs. Because I would see like a female running around in heat, and you might have about 6 or 7 mutts chasing her, and they all scrapping and fighting each other to try to see who's gonna breed. So that's what I seen coming up, when I was describing the mutts, but that was just, the area I was going on. But go ahead, what you were saying?
Yeah, like, even as being as a young kid back in the days, when you look at these dogs, you don't even know if it's actually a pit bull or not. I mean, there's just all kinds of dogs all over the place.
Right.
But, it was a popular thing as a fad back in the days with the younger generation. But, as time, went by, you tend to realize there was more to the dogs than themselves. And, later on in life, I met a lot of people, and, things changed down the road and then I was out of dogs for a long time. And then 30 years later, I wind up popping up with the dogs again.
Right, right. So, and you got a history in the hip hop culture. Explain that. Let the viewers in on that part.
Well, as a teenager, I was always into dancing, hanging out with the girls in the hood,
Right,
I was breakdancing a lot, breakdancing with Rocksteady Crew and Dynamics and battling in the Williamsburg Bridge, to making movies, taking roles in movies like B Street, Footloose. I'm part of, in the culture back then, hip hop was like the biggest thing. So even that, I was like a member with the Zulu Nation, with African Bambaataa, and then Chapter 12 and Music and Dance. The culture grew up with me. It was part of me back in the days, until later in life, you meet and you start a family, things change, people grow up. But you never, you look back in the days and things were so peaceful, wonderful, everybody got along. The violence wasn't even out there like that. Everybody dancing, music, and even hanging out with the dogs. That kept a lot of us, away from the heavy parts of the streets and doing the right thing,
Right, right. And you was also part of the Guardian Angels, right?
Yeah, I was in the Guardian Angels,
Yep.
with Curtis and all of them, and used to man the trains, and protecting the community. I always believed that, you look out for the elders and the people in the community, and I was in it for quite some time, and then, eventually I got out of it, and, started getting a little rough out there, and there was too many changes. And, as I was trying to go through school and taking care of my family, my mother especially, and so kind of like had a put that to the sideline. But you never forget, they're all wonderful people, but we took big risks, but it was worth it. The community meant everything.
And I'm gonna give you a shout out, like we give everybody when they say the military service, thank you for your service. Yo, y'all was definitely part of something that was different. Because I remember growing up and I see a guardian angel on the train, and of course, I was living that other lifestyle. You used to look at them and be like, oh, toy cop. But y'all really put your life on the line if you know what the fabric of the city was during that time. You know what I'm saying? And y'all was as a man, y'all was holding it down when I look at it, when I look back. So shout out to y'all for y'all service for that.
I appreciate that a lot, man. It was worth it. The risks were worth it. I've met everybody in every, forms of life, from gangbangers to, the people who want to look out for the community and everything. But we always had that balance in life. You have to balance it out with the good and the bad. And, one thing we learned is survival in the streets is, we had to survive back then. And, today's generation doesn't understand that. It's a whole different ball game, a whole different world. The kids are a little bit, brought up with all the nonsense. But I tell you the truth, man, if we had more of that culture back then today, the kids would probably be enjoying doing more things and positive things and more positive roles. Right. Fortunately, time changes, so we just hold back that, and my thing I just want to say to all you doggers out there and dogmen out there, when you see a young kid out there, stretch your hands out to them and help them. Embrace them. Don't judge them because of what they wear or how they look, or, I'm going to tell you, I put a lot of big old timers to the side and tell them just to fuck off my face, excuse my language. Because, the kids meant everything. I was one of those kids. Right, right. All it took was that, somebody to give you that helping hand, and, it changed my whole life forever with the dog world and made me much better than what I would ever expect it to be. I was really into the dogs, and I was really into the compassion for the people that actually looked out for me. And I want to thank them all. Right. And I want all you guys, when you see a young kid, give them a helping hand, because one day they're going to turn the pages of history and they're going to look at you and say, hey, I knew that guy. He helped me through life. He gave me that helping hand. And they're going to become the future of the breed. The preservation of the American Pit Bull Terrier is based on the new generation as they go along. I don't know if you noticed, but in time, a lot of the old timers are passing away, and times change, and so I think we need to go back and start teaching and educating the younger generation for a betterment of the future of this breed. Right.
And I hope through this conversation it could expand on that. Those are perfect words to, to put forth a better effort in, like you said, preserving the breed for future generations.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. So, hey, let's get to the meat and potatoes, man.
There you go. Let's go.
What was the Shaka dog, right? That was one of your first dogs you had, right?
Yeah, believe it or not, Shaka. The story with Shaka was an amazing story. It was many years ago. I was driving on the Bell Parkway in Brooklyn, and there was an old couple. They broke down in the car. Right. And I saw them as I was driving by. I said, yeah, I got to help these people, these poor man and lady. They had a flat tire. So I backed up and, I changed the flat for them and everything else. And they, wanted to offer me money. I says, no, don't worry about it. Just get home safe, you guys, So the guy comes out in the back of the car and he gives me this little dark brindle puppy, hands it to me with some papers. And I says, what's this? He says, no, I want you to have it. We're getting old. We can't take care of dogs no more.
How old was he? How old was he then? Do you remember? You remember?
The guy or the dog?
No, the dog, the pup that he gave you.
The pup had to be, I would say, at least close to a month old. It was a little tiny thing. It was, in my hands. This little thing was like a little tiny rugrat. So I took this pup home. I said, all right. I thought about it, and I, kind of got attached to the dog, looking at it. And I said, all right, I'll take it home. So when I read the papers on this dog home, the name Bill Ashton's Pumpin' Iron Smoking Joe was on as a sire, and the bottom said Barbie's Black Widow. So I didn't know nothing about this dog. So as a teenager going through the hood, one day I'm hanging out in the park and, by the store, and this guy comes up to me and talking to me about pit bulls and, talking about rolling dogs back in the days and stuff like that. So, me as a young kid, you just want to see what you got. And, my dog was already getting mature. So I looked at her, and she turned out to be a phenomenal animal. And, one thing led to another, in the street world, she became a four-time winner. off the chain. I was into that conditioning heavy. I would just walk around the park, Highland Park, or Prospect Park, or whatever they can go.
You
And
at Highland Park, there used to be a lot of stuff going on down there with the dogs back in the day, huh?
oh yeah, we used to hang out by the handball courts. There about 30, 40 dogs, and everybody hanging out, showing off their dogs while we played handball.
Right.
And yeah, it was popular back then. So make a long story short, so I had this dog, and she wound up, being very, very good one day. So one day, my family went through some hard times. My stepfather, my father had passed away. My stepfather, he wasn't doing too good. He got involved with too much, drugs and stuff like that as a young teenager. I didn't know what to do. My mom's struggling, working 2 jobs, trying to keep me and my sister afloat. And so when Shaka was competing at the time, I used to take that money and give it to my mother to pay the rent and stuff like that. And then, I decided to stop. After the last show, I said, I said, there's no need to do it no more. She's getting old, and I went into a guy had bought some great dog. I seen this dog once before. It was a daughter off a Jeep. And, we went an hour and 44 minutes, and, we prevailed. And then from there on, that was history. So, years later, I got out of the dogs and life went on. And as I got older, almost 30 to 40 years later, I bumped into an old friend, Big C, and, he got me back into the dogs. And one day I met another legendary New York dog man, the Pizza Man, and we got to know each other. One day he asked me, he was going to go by a friend of his. They had to go pick up a puppy and stuff like that and take a ride with him. So I went to take a ride with him. We went out east, and then I met this old guy, and he was standing by this big pickup truck. And then I looked at the back of the tailgate, and it said Bill Ashton. Says, wait a minute, that sounds like the dog in my pedigree paper. So I walked up to the gentleman and I said, excuse me, Bill, are you Bill Ashton? Did you ever own a dog named Pumpin' Iron Smoking Joe? He goes, yeah, that was one of my first dogs and one of my best dogs. So, I met him, and then, we talked and everything, and who was to know that years later we would become very great friends and practically partners together, with the dogs. And he was a very old guy, he was, not into that dog world anymore, kind of, but right. He always stood there, and he was teaching me the dogs, and he gave me his dogs, and, he took me under his wing. And just think about it, 30 years later, you meet the guy who get your first dog and your best dog, right. And he had a part of that. So and the rest from there became history.
Right. I mean, how could you bump into, like I said, some people just fortunate, man, because like I said, in the dog game and, about these dogs, you ran into one of the legends.
Yeah, and him and Pizza Man were my idols, and my brother Big C is my brother. I call him my brother because he brought me back into the world of the dogs, and he hooked me up with the right people, and and even then it was tough because as a young greenhorn, a lot of people don't want to talk to you. A lot of these old timers, they don't want to acknowledge you because you're young, you're fresh. They don't know who you are. They don't trust you. It took me many years before Mr. Bill actually accepted me, in that elusive circle of life. And once I was there, I was so fascinated with so much. I said to myself, listen, if you're going to do anything in life, be the best that you can be, So, it's just like in everything in a dog game, you get the good and the bad. You face, rhetoric from other people. There's always the jealousy and the animosity in the dog world that comes with the territory. Right. But you know how you avoid that? And my advice to the generation and the people today is don't worry about who's got what kind of dog or who's famous or how good he is or none. Worry about yourself and worry about the accomplishments that you want to create for yourself and your future with your animals. One of my best words I've always said after years of later on was, my greatest battle was not with my adversary, but with myself to get the best out of my own animal, to make sure I get 110% out of them. That was the greatest achievement. And I got more fascinated with the animals and to the conditioning. And to me, the dog was everything. Because the dog not only was the bread and butter, but the dog itself showed me so much. And with Bill's knowledge, Like I said, there's so much to talk about, but I'll let you ask the questions.
Yeah, we could go on for days, especially talking about Mr. Bill, man, because like I said, I learned a lot from him also, man.
Oh yeah, he loved you, man. He loved you a lot, and he gave me one of the leashes that you made.
I know.
And I actually use it. One of the best, actually the best retractable leashes I've ever seen.
Yeah,
It gave you a lot of good resistance in the animals. Easier. I put it on a long lead, and the dog could literally lunge out and come back, lunge out and come back, and actually get good exercise on its front shoulders and its back, especially when you put it on a harness.
right,
So
right.
I want to tell you, man, I love that fucking leash, and I still got it to this day, believe it or not. And that was years ago.
Hey, but the main thing, me and Bill, Mr. Bill, will start out with the dogs, but it'll like evolve into so many other different conversations about family, everything. That's how when he really takes a liking to you, he opens up. You know what I'm saying? And one of my famous stories that he ever told me was, and this will open me up even more about like caring for your dog. His story about him being the salesman, and the car salesman quitting his job because he knew he had to do certain things to be in his dog's corner if his dog needed him, not just with the conditioning, but afterwards. When you go out in the woods, your dog get banged up by one of them wild hogs, you got to be able to take care of him. And that story,
definitely.
That story is like, wow, it's like, he put the money aside and just know that what he had to do to take care of his partner afterwards. That's just...
Yeah, that thing I want to mention is that once Bill takes a liking to you, just like yourself, once he opens to you and gives you his heart, he gives you 110% of his heart. One of the things I've learned with Bill, and the biggest things, and with Pizza Man, everything is the compassion of the animals. You have to have respect and compassion of the animals. Today's dog men, when you compare yesterday's dog men to today's dog men, there's not much of a difference, but the difference is that if today's dog men want to be more successful, sometimes you got to stay back and really focus on the animal and show a lot of compassion and take your time with them. Don't be in a rush. Just like what Bill did. We learned a lot. You spent a lot of hours sitting there, doing keeps and studying the dog and solving problems. One thing I learned about the old timers, some of them are very tight-lipped. And you can buy, and don't get me wrong, I have a museum. I have thousands of books and maybe hundreds of keeps and you name it. But sometimes you could take all those keeps, even 800 keeps that I have, throw them in the garbage. The reason for that is that particular animal you condition is not that same dog. Every dog is a different individual animal. And even when you do the pre-keep and you design a keep, even that keep that you design is always going to be subjected to changes because as you go along through the program, things happen with this animal. So you have to sometimes erase things, calibrate things, solve problems. And one of the things I realized, there are so much literature that are all excellent on these animals, but the truth is, and the honesty about it is that they never tell you how to troubleshoot a problem, how it works, the way it works, and why it works. And this is what fascinated me to do further because I needed the answers. I didn't want to sit down in a room with about 30 dogmen hearing all kinds of war stories. Don't get me wrong. To hear the stories of the great old days is fascinating, but It didn't please me. What pleased me is how can I get my animal 110%, and be able to perform in the woods, chasing hogs with the same excellent performance and to outclass some of these top doggers. It wasn't easy, especially when you're a greenhorn and especially when you're starting from the ranks. It took a lot of years, but, I enjoyed it.
Right. So who are some of the other dogmen that, you might have met that may have had an influence, on you in the dog game?
I give Pizza Man a lot of credit, especially my brother Big C. I met a lot of great old-timers, and there's a lot of old-timers I won't mention their names, but were great friends of mine now, today, with much respect. But I remember the first day meeting them, and they wouldn't acknowledge me. And they would push me to the side and, oh, you don't know yet, you're still growing, and, you got to learn this, you got to do this, you got to do that. But then here, years later, they'll come back and how do you do this? How do you fix this? And I'm like, get the fuck out of my face. Figure it out yourself, Yeah. You push me to the side, now you got to do your own thing. In this dog world, and even with dogs in performance, there are a lot of people who are strictly deeply into the conditioning aspects. There are guys who are better handlers than others. There are guys who are better breeders than others. To be an all-around with everything in that elusive circle, you have to really, really know your shit. And guys like Mr. Bill, Pizza Man, and many other greats, like, as I mentioned, and there's a whole, just about everybody. It took them a lot of years to perfect some of these things. But in the dog game itself, I've seen many guys who were excellent handlers but couldn't condition. I've seen guys who could condition but couldn't do anything else better. I've seen guys that could look at a dog, and know how to breed a dog and know you're going to get great dogs, and understood the genetics and understood everything that needed to be done for that particular program. In my thing with myself was I didn't care if you had a grand champion or whatever to breed to. That didn't matter. I want to know what produced those dogs. I've always looked to breed to a producer, so I always have that consistency of always having dogs that always make the grade, was performance enhanced animals that no matter how many times you bred them, everyone was able to make that position in the hunting world, especially when you go to Carolina swamps, so why breed to so? And I've seen many great dogs. I mean, I was offered pups from Grand Champion Destroyer to some of the greatest dogs, from breedings to other great dogs, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to breed what produced them, and like Bill always did, his program was basically, a family of genetic, the Jack dogs that he's created back in the days, and even till this days, we're looking at about 7 or 8 generations of consistent winners, and some of them were like 86 wins, and you're lucky, and 6 losses, and some of the losses were to champions, grand champions, and phenomenal animals. But just on the family tree alone, producing cousins, aunts, uncles, sisters, and they're always there. That it was the genetics held. And once in a while we had an outcross with like a double bred animal to keep that, line going, then go back into it, to retain some of the vigor. So everything that Bill did and a lot of these dog guys did was master that system. And that's why when you look at strains like the Mayday dogs, Tance dogs, and a lot of other great lines that stood the test of time for so many years, was because of that particular program. It wasn't to breed just to a champion because he's a champion. I wanted to breed the producing dogs that produce. My chances of winning more was getting more to win, not breeding and then having a whole litter of curs. I've seen grand champions get bred to each other and not produce one thing.
Right. Now, when you said the Jack line, I just wanted to clarify so my readers could be, familiar with what you're talking about. You're talking about Blackjack. Right?
The original dog was Blackjack. It was the son of a Senorita, who was Senorita was a daughter of Smith Walton's Bad Billy. From that one dog, he was a 2-time winner. His name was Jack. Produced a legacy of 3 family trees with, like I said, 7 or 8 generations and 4 or 5 top dog men, all sharing the same blood. And I needed an outcross. So one of my best outcrosses, and I thank the Pizza Man, was a gift from the Pizza Man. And it was off of that champion Sammy, who was off of Oklahoma John's Jack, to Rodriguez champion Gator. And them Sammy dogs was producing dog consistencies throughout the years. Winning dogs and show dogs and weight pool competition dogs, you name it, they were producing. So he was a producing family of dogs that produced champions. So I took a double-bred daughter off a granddaughter off of Sammy and bred that to the Jack line. And from there on, the rest for myself was history. I was getting consistency. And it was perfect. It was the perfect outcross. Those 2 family lines clicked so well together. And yet these 2 guys, Pizza Man and Bill, were great dear friends. And I realized that the chemistry was right there between the 2, with the 2 lines, and then the rest became history.
When you said Oklahoma Jack, I mean, that's the guy. He just recently passed away, right? Oklahoma.
Yes, and rest in peace, John. He came to my house many a times. He had Oklahoma John's Jack, which was the son of Rodriguez Gator, and Sammy, champion Sammy, Pizza Man's one of his best dogs, was a son directly off of Jack. So
was Jack in the same? Was Sammy in the same litter as Screwy, and or that's a half sister and brother?
Pretty much all in the same family genetics, and it's like Bones in the Closet and all the rest of them. Yes, they were all related. This is
Remember
why I
the
liked the Pizza Man's dogs, was because they were a family-oriented line that he worked with.
right, right. You remember the Screwy dog? And I think she had a sister named Tony.
Yeah, Tony that went into Shady Days and, that lost her leg or something like that.
Well, yeah, Tony was owned by Shady Days, and she went into another dog, Strong Island Kennel's dog. I think the dog was named from that kennel. But yeah, that's all Oklahoma John stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to give him a little shout out, being that he just passed away.
Yep, definitely, man. May he rest in peace, And I give the Pizza Man a lot of credit because he kept the line going throughout the years, and his success is unreal. These dogs from these two family trees stood the test of time, many generations. We never sold dogs. The majority of these dogs were kept within the family. Later on, once the potential was understood how great they were. It takes a lot of years, to establish a good line. I always say to everybody with these dogs, there's no bloodline better than each other. It's what you make of them. I could tell you a story, a real quick story. Was an old man I seen. His name was Jimmy Johnson. Many guys don't know him. I remember many times he would go to the, to the hog hunts, and they used to give him some of the hogs for dinner, stuff. He would go and buy all the dogs that didn't perform well, that basically was no good. And he would buy them and buy them and buy them. And I always used to say, what the hell is this guy doing? But don't get me wrong. The dogs had some of the great blood in them, but, unfortunately, they were not potential working lines. But the same guy would take those dogs and perfect the breedings and take the same dogs and compete against the guys that sold them the same dog and would beat them. Mm. So, and the trial runs, and the races, the treadmill races, he would win. And I asked him, what's the biggest? I asked him. I says, Jimmy, what's your method on that? I mean, what did you see? He said, I saw a dog that didn't love his owner, and I understood that. And what happened was a lot of these people just don't give the time for the dogs to mature. A lot of people don't have the patience for these dogs. Sometimes some lines work well and produce well. Some lines skip a generation. Like when you look at the old Red Eagle lines. The first, when you do breedings, the males were great, the females weren't, they were cold. Sometimes they skip a generation, so that's what happens.
One of the things is definitely patience. I've seen guys, they'll put a somewhat like a time. Well, if he ain't ready by 15 months or whatever, I'll be like, that's so messed up for the breed like that, when you don't just give them the maximum amount to mature. A lot of people don't have like you said, the patience.
Yeah, it takes, you have to have patience. If you don't have the patience and you don't know what you're looking at, then, fortunately, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and hopefully you'll capitalize and learn from them. But then again, there are a lot of individuals that shouldn't even have these dogs. They have no patience. And, to them, it's just a commodity. You buy them, use them, abuse them, and then get rid of them. That, to me, doesn't make you a dog man. And I don't care how much money you got. I've seen guys roll around with 10 grand and 60 grand and want to freaking show off all their money. And, it's sad to say, but in the dog world, all the drugs and all the nonsense and the shit is what's really ruined this freaking breed of dog, and, and put a lot of, bad publicity on them, and, caused a lot of problems, especially for the public's perception of this dogs, right. It was a shame, and people want to ban these dogs and everything for what? They're great animals. It's it's not the animal, it's the people behind the animal.
Right. That's definitely, I agree with that wholeheartedly. You got a chance to watch Grand Champion Mongoose?
I've never seen Mongoose. I'm gonna be very honest with you, but I owned. Bill had handed me as a gift. It was a triple bred granddaughter of a goose. She was a triple bred right off of Brindle Goose. I had her for a while. I've seen Mongoose in some of the old classic tapes back in the old days. I don't know what the hell happened to them. Some guy showed me one day, and it was a phenomenal animal. But the goose line, it was a phenomenal line. The dog was legendary himself. It was freaking fantastic.
And that Brindle Goose, that was a male, right?
Yes, that was a son right off a goose.
I remember Mr. Bill telling me he sent that to Russian Bill out there as a gift.
Yeah.
right, at one time, because he said he didn't think that Russian Bill got the credit that he deserved for breeding that dog, Grand Champion Mongoose. So he sent
exactly.
he sent them Brindle Goose. Now, did Brindle Goose capture any of those traits from his sire?
Yes, he was a great producer. You know, they had a lot of great dogs that came off of him. Most of them dogs are somewhere in the Carolinas, if I'm not mistaken. Really, really nice stuff. But if you look in the history books, you'll see like Champion Pearl, Miss Goose, two-time winner. There was a lot of great dogs in the books in the archives. If you really dig down, you'll find some literature on them.
I remember she was a black female, right? Champion Pearl.
Yeah, she was a dark brindle, almost blackish looking,
Almost
just like very dark.
Like Mongoose, because most of the pictures you see, he looks solid black, but Mr. Bill told me he had like a brindle in him.
Yes, yes.
So what about Chaka? What you thought about Chaka, Champion Chaka?
Well, I read a lot on him, and I learned a lot about that dog. He was a phenomenal dog, Shaka. You know, actually, when he stopped bolt action, as Bill was telling me that his partner at the time wanted to, I guess, use him again or whatever, was his partner's dog at the time, and Bill told him don't. He just got done hog hunting, and then all of a sudden, he decided to go ahead with it, not even like 3 months after stopping bolt action. And then unfortunately he went into Wino, Steve Black's and them guys' dogs, and Grand Champion Wino won that show only because Shaka was picked up game. He lost his, from what I was told, and then through the video I saw, he lost his cutters, so they decided to pick him up. Now, had that dog given rest and given at least a year off and compete, it would have been a whole different ball game. But the funny thing is, Wino was never heard of after that. It was just seemed to disappear. Nobody knows, what the situation. He was never bred as far as I know of. Maybe they did. I don't know. It's like many champions. People win some great ones, and then all of a sudden you don't never hear the dog again, or whatever happened to them. Maybe they expired, and later on the way. That's the problem with a lot of the dog world, was they didn't know the technology of meds. People didn't know how to take the aftercare. Some people,
Right.
It depends on the situation. But some people are so entrenched in that they didn't focus on the most important part, and was trying to save the dog. What good is a good dog if he can't live to produce? You know what I mean?
Right. And that's, like I said, that's that part. That's that story, Mr. Bill. Like I said, he left that high-paying job to go learn about, what do you have to do to save his dog afterwards if he, got into some problems.
One thing I learned about Pops, I always call him Pops. Bill took a liking to a few good dogmen. There was the Keystone Kid. Then you got New School Kennels. You got myself and many others that he took under the wing, and a lot of knowledge was shared with him. Bill, one thing about Bill, he didn't like people who abused animals. Bill was very compassionate about helping people, helping their dogs. He didn't like the nonsense. He didn't like certain things. He was a very patient man, and he always made sure the dog. He cared about the dog's health. He cared about people, and everything else. But the thing was, the dog meant so much to him, and this is where I learned a lot from him. Basically, was that inner feeling and the understanding and the mutual respect for the animal, and that's why we clicked. And how I met Bill one day is, we met at a friend's house during a birthday party, and we were talking, and I had just got done doing a beautiful keep on one, and I had to keep in my pocket. The Bill turns around, and we're talking, and I took my keep and I laid it up on the table. And he says, "Oh, shit." He took his keep and laid his on top of the table. Did you know that these two keeps were almost similar?
Oh, wow.
The way we were. And the one thing about him and myself is that everything that we did, we put it in black and white. Right. We always wrote down everything. That's the bad thing about conditioners and dogmen today, is that they work a dog, but if I ask them what day was it, what was the condition, what was the atmospheric temperature on this animal, or anything that affects during training, they couldn't tell me. They would just say, yeah, I got it. But then,
not cutting you off, but when you said that you took the keep out of your pocket, I just wanted to make sure people know that wasn't a keep that you got from somebody. That was you recording.
No, I design and write my own keep. I never ever use anybody's keep. To me, it's a false application of something that has no effect on your animal.
Right.
You know, people swear, oh, I got this guy, I got the Windy City Combine's keep. Let me tell you something. You could throw all that shit in the trash. If you don't understand how to make this animal go the distance for the long haul and condition this animal properly and get the right weight, the right, the animal's mindset, it's that keep is useless. Just because some guy won with it doesn't mean it's going to work with your dog. First of all, it's not your dog. Get it straight to your head. You know, every animal has to be studied accordingly. And let me tell you something. Every dog that I ever conditioned for people or for myself, every time this animal performed, let's say if I designed a keep and he was successful, he or she was successful, the next time the dog went on another outing, and I sent him out to go chase some wild boars in the swamps, each keep was different. I can show you keeps from 2-time, 3-time, 4-timers, and not one of the keep is the same. And why is that? Even though I had success in the previous run, I come to realize that as each year goes by, the animal comes up in weight. It comes up in different situations. The animal's body physiology changes. Also, the time of the year, whether it's summertime, wintertime, fall, spring, whatever you may.
All of that.
Right, that atmospheric temperature changes, so that conditioning aspect is going to be way different. That's why it's so important to study the animal, calibrate it, understand what's going on, and the age. As the dog ages, the metabolism changes. What he used to digest and dissolve at a certain time, is not the same anymore. As he gets older, the digestion rate slows down. So what do you feed this animal to compensate for the slow digestion process? That's why when I say how it works, the way it works, when it works, is you have to understand every little typical thing, because it makes a difference between winning and losing. It makes a difference between the animal's overall health. Right. That, to me, is the most important thing. That's why having keeps is good to, if someone gives you a keep, you're blessed. Don't get me wrong. Don't take it wrong. Study them, learn, and see their methods. But understand something. If you're going to be a conditioner, you need to design a keep for that animal based on the knowledge that you picked up from the pre-keep, seeing what he can and cannot do. I use this as an example, and I'll say it very fast. Guys use treadmills, whether it's road work, whether it's email, pro. Every method is different. And there's a difference in resistance, a difference in how you work them and how you put that in sets for them. It's like climbing a ladder. You climb a ladder, but when you get to a certain point, you might have to reduce that workout just to maintain that dog's body weight and temperature, because remember one thing, the longer the keep goes, the more the dog reaches a point of his life when it goes into a peak. Once he's at that peak, he's ready to go. But if you pass that peak, he's going to become lagged, and then he becomes depleted with a lot of his substance in his body because you overworked him. And it comes to a point where he climbs that wall, but then now he's falling off the wall because you can't maintain him because you already passed his peak. So conditioning, if we go into a world of conditioning, it's going to be a whole different topic. So it's hard. I can't really describe it all in this and today in this moment right now. But what I'm trying to get to is that with the animals, you have to have the patience and the time. You have to really want to do it. For every maybe 30 or 40 guys that learn it, you're lucky you get 1 or 2 or 3 that master it. It took a long time, and even to then, I don't know everything. I'm still learning. We never stop learning to the day we die. Yeah. So whether it's a kid or an old timer, always take a time to listen carefully. What I like to do is usually I see people's methods and study what they're doing. If one time I had I met some doggers out at the dog show and the ADDA show, and they're sitting there talking on the chair, and some guys, oh, you know so much about conditioning, blah, 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 and trying to overtalk me. And I'm like, listen, if you want to talk about it, we can share experiences and knowledge. I don't do this, with these dogs. So I'm retired. If you want help, I'll help you. My success is your success when you do good for yourself. And I become very proud of you. It's not about me. It's not about the books. It's not about the fame and the glory. It's not about who you know. It's about how much compassion as a person that you're willing to help another individual succeed and not be jealous. That's why I say the dog world can be also a shady world, because jealousy arises when people want to kiss ass, and it doesn't pay, because if you're not focused on you in that animal, you're never going to be successful.
Mm. That's a powerful statement right there. Let's talk a little bit about nutrition.
Okay, here's a little funny thing, and me and you once discussed this many years ago.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to address to all the guys out there is when we talk about feed, what's better, raw and kibble, let's erase all that. They're all good. Everything that you give in the animal can be very healthy based on what the animal likes and what his digestive system can absorb and what makes him better. So to contradict about what is better than the other, it's not what's important. My thing is this. I will start with kibble. A guy came up to me one day and he said to me, listen, I feed my dog the best. I got like this bag of Pro Plan that just came out, and it's an $80 bag. Back in the days, man, $80 is like fucking $200 or $300 back in the days. He said, I got the best. I feed my dog nothing but the best,
Right.
But yet, as good as he fed his animals, he wasn't having such a much of an success, and he was having a lot of issues during his training, conditioning, and keeping on the dogs. And I wanted to address this to many people. Back in the here's the difference between old school and new technology. Don't get me wrong, the $80 bag of dog food is way better than any brand of dog food. But here's the problem. If you give a high-performance bag of dog food, let's say I'm going to start putting this in perspective. Let's say the B12s or potassium on there. They got everything, all the vitamins you need is in that bag of dog food.
And everything on that label, the general analysis of the breakdown on what right? You talking about that on the
So when you look at the bag and it says 21% protein or whatever percent fat, whatever the percentage is, you have to look at that. But here's the thing. So this guy bought a pound of high performance food. Then he's giving his dog supplements on top of that. Then he's giving the dogs vegetables on top of that. But then he can't understand why is his dog blowing hot during workouts. And I tried to explain to them, did you measure the amount of B12 and potassium levels between all three items? And, fortunately there was something high. And let's just say one of the factors was the B12 was way too high, the protein content. So, or the potassium. So now he got an 80-pound bag of this top-of-the-line food, and now he knows that the potassium was too high or the B12. How do you remove it? You can't. You cannot remove that from that bag of dog food because it's already compressed into that mixture. Right. You can't take it out of the plants, and you can't take it out of the supplement. How do you remove and do that? So the trick was this. So here's this guy with top-of-the-line food and is having these conditioning issues and the rise of body temperature. So I tried to explain to them, and then he tries to, test my intelligence, as they would say. So I told him, back in the old days, the old guys, and he says, Hunterman, what did you use? And, what was your thing? I says, well, you laugh if I tell you that me, Bill, and a couple of the old-timers, we used Purina One. We were using pedigree dog food. Some of the guys were kicking ass with old Roy. And they were laughing at me. Said, how do you feed your dog that garbage? It wasn't garbage. Back in them days, that was one of the best dog foods around. Right. But here's the concept. You guys are ready?
Let's go.
Back in the dog food in these brands had a low percentage of proteins and low percentage of fat. It's basically a cheap grade of dog food. But when you start to add a certain amount of supplements to the food and a certain amount of plant-based vegetables to the food, you create your own high-performance food. So while this guy bought an 80-pound bag of dog food that had all the shit in it, which was just better food, don't get me wrong, and I was adding my own supplements and my own stuff to my food, here was the difference between that. When I had a problem, if the B12 levels were too high, potassium was too much, or the iron was too high or something, I can literally remove it. Right. Why? Because I made my own mixture. From using a cheap grade food and adding the supplements and the vegetables to create this high performance food. So when I separated that, I was able to control what went into my dog and whatever I had to take out of it to itemize and level that dog's chemistry level in the body. So I was in control of what went into my dog and when went out of my dog. So that wouldn't you as a conditioner want to be able to be in control to remove something that might be harmful. The reason why I mention this is because a lot of people tend to overdo it. They add supplements with a high-performance food, They add all kinds of stuff, and what happens is the dog goes into what we call cannibalism, meaning that he rejects the food you feed him. He eats his own muscle as fuel, and that's because that's created by over intoxication of the supplements that are in all three products. Okay, so too much of something is always no good. So here it disturbs the dog's body system, and being that the enzymes have to digest this, the dog has to create more enzymes in his pancreas to digest this particular food you're feeding them. The more enzymes he creates, the hotter the dog gets. So this is what the problem was. So getting back to what we began with is that sometimes the best is not always the best, but what you give less that you can control of what goes in and out becomes the best.
Right, because you controlling that. And
yes.
And also, when you add in those supplements, it's also good to jot every little thing you do down so you can know, okay, I need to decrease this and this amount. Like
bingo. That's and you hit it right on the nail. You guys out there in the field have to write everything down. What good is all this understanding if you don't put it in black and white? And think about it, even when you go through this process, win or lose, no shame. But the thing is that you can go back and look at this paperwork and reflect all the problems you face. This becomes a pamphlet of troubleshooting. And now you can actually troubleshoot this if you should ever fall into the same situation with another dog. So now this particular guy that bought this bag of dog food turns around and asks me, why is this happening and why is that? So, and I ask him, I'm the top guy. I've spent a lot of money. I went around the world and blah, blah, blah. So I just ask him a couple of questions. I says, this is your dog. I says, what's his blood pressure? He goes, I don't know. I said, what is the blood pressure of a dog? He goes, I don't know. It's 160 over 180 ppm. Anything over 180 is high blood pressure. Anything under that is under 160 is what they call anemic. Okay. I says, what's a dog's body temperature? He goes, I think 100 and something. I said, no, what's 100 and something? He couldn't answer me. A dog's body temperature is anywhere from 103 to 104 degrees. So a lot of times when you condition these dogs and they go up another temperature higher, like 105, 106, 107, they could what they call itemize. They stay straight at that particular temperature range. Then it's being controlled. So if that temperature starts to spike 2 or 3 or 4 degrees more than expected, then there's a problem. So what's the problem? Is it a conditioning problem, an atmospheric temperature problem? Is it a supplemental problem? Is it a feeding problem? And one of the biggest things these conditioners today, they don't even weigh the food. Don't you know that each amount of weight has a different amount of breakdown process in the digestive system based on the enzymes in the pancreas? So if you so much as remove a quarter, that dog could drop a half a pound. If you add a palmful of more in your hand in the feed, that dog can actually gain a pound. So, but the problem is that particular dog you're conditioning is he has a high metabolism, burning fat, fuel more because he's high strung, or is he an older type dog that has a slow metabolism? If so, if you're going to go with a dog that has a lower metabolism, wouldn't you want to lower the protein levels and increase the greens a little more and give him more oxygen intake to increase the distance?
Right.
So it's a method. It's a trick. It's a method. You have to understand that. Everything comes hand in hand like a car with a motor, transmission, and a rear. How could you race if you don't have one of the best that can equalize together, that works together as a whole unit?
Speaking of cars, when I last spoke to Mr. Bill, he had me looking for a Chevy for him. Did he ever find it?
Yeah, I gave him a 454 big block, and he was putting in one of his race cars. He had a beautiful 1944 coupe. Bill was always into the cars. I used to have cars. Now I'm more of like a truck guy with off-road trucks that I just use.
He was looking for a S10 Blazer. Had me running around here outside.
Oh, my God. Yeah, he was a car fanatic. He loved cars. He used to go to the car shows.
Yeah, man.
But, all this knowledge doesn't go to waste. It goes down to me helping the next person. Same way Bill put his time and his heart to me and many of my brothers. He was a master. He is the master. I've known a lot of old-timers. For him, Pizza Man, and many of them, they are masters of their work with their animals. They understood the animals. They had patience for the animals. They were the best around that I've seen. You have to really sit down and pay attention to what they're trying to tell you. I've sat down with guys and we sit down and the dogmen get together barbecues and the guys yesing me to death. Yeah, I know. Everybody knows it till your time. You got to put it yourself into that situation. Right. Then you're lost. You know, you're only as good as, like Bill said, he always said this, you're only as good as you put into your dog.
And that makes a whole lot of sense. You got a product coming out still?
A product, and no, what we do is basically, I don't have products, but I'm working on a book.
Right, the book.
You know, the products that I have is basically experimental that I studied and tried. In other words, I'll give it to you an instant, guys. You know, when you look at dogs, you know, you don't just look at the pit bull. You look at other breeds of dogs. You know, we talked about this, my brother. You know, I've always wanted to know, how do you take a greyhound? You know, what makes a greyhound run in 110 degrees around a track at 60 or 50 miles an hour and not overheat and have a stroke? You know, when you look at the Huskies in Alaska, a sled dog team that's traveling 60 miles in the Antarctica in about a foot deep or 2 foot deep of snow and 8 below zero, 60 miles of tracking, racing, and not lose 2 pounds of body weight. What were they feeding that animal? What was the conditioning process for that animal? You know, there's so many things to understand in the dogs and in the dog world that's so important to learn everything. That's how when we started using different supplements and certain things, you know, you have to know, just even if we're sharing the same supplement, well, how much is a supplement for a 20-pound dog, 30-pound dog, 40-pound dog, or 50-pound dog? Every supplement is different. So, you know, I'll let you, you know, answer a couple of questions, but these are the things that, you know, you have to understand, that you just don't throw stuff in a bowl and call it a day. You need to understand, is that the proper amount to give that animal? And if you give that animal, how many times a week do you give that animal? Because if you do this every day and 24 hours pass and he takes a dump out, he's still digesting the supplements from the days before. Now you keep flooding them up with more supplements. You never get a dog a chance to detox himself and absorb this into a system. And this is what caused that catabolism and causes many problems in conditioning with the overheating and everything else. And then you scratch your head and ask yourself, what did I do wrong?
Right. So that book you're talking about, when could that be expected?
Well, it's taking me I'm on my 6th year writing. Every time I'm working or every time I'm doing something pops into my head and I write it down. Sometimes trial and error, experimental stages with certain things, I write it down. My years of writing keeps and writing stuff down and learning all the stuff from the mistakes to the problem solvers, I wrote it down. I want to design a book, and I call it, it's going to be my book in the future is going to be Hunterman's Book of Knowledge, Way of the Warriors. And it's basically a conditioning book. It's going to have all the grades in it. It's going to have basically everything to troubleshoot and solve problems. You know, there's Mrs. Zanetti makes a great book. Schoolboy makes great books too. Right. And my book, I just wanted to write down troubleshooting things. You know, I can tell you about keeps. I can tell you about conditioning, but that's not going to help you. You need to understand, you know, the difference in body weight. You need to understand the difference in type of dogs and their body structures. Some dogs do better in hotter climates. Some dogs do better in colder climates. The physiology of the dog is different. If you ever look at a dog and look at it, some dogs, they work out. Some dogs have a higher front end and a lower rear. Some have a higher rear than a lower front. Some are left-handed. Some are right-handed. Some dogs are long, rangy. Some are short, broad, stocky, heavy bone. How do you condition these particular animals with these different body structures? This is why I'm so fascinated myself. People may consider me overkill. I'm not. To me, the animal is everything, and I need to understand how I can get this animal to perform at its best by understanding all the weakness of this animal and understanding what he's capable of and what he can digest in the system and how his body reacts to from the program that I'm designing and the food that I'm feeding him and the supplements that he's taking. So that the book I want to do is basically based on understanding everything that needs to be understood. And it'll be like a guideline, but you would have to, as a reader, would have to actually pay attention and take notes to what is being said and see if that particular problem is affecting your dog. and see. It's like an encyclopedia. You know, when you want to look for what the word means, don't you got to go to the index or the back of the book and see exactly what page it is and what it stands for.
Right.
A lot of these books from the past and everything were basically picture books. No one ever took the time to really explain all these details and you know, stuff like, I could give you keeps from all over the world, but that's not going to help you. That's not going to teach you. What's going to teach you is to understand the product itself, to understand the dog itself, to understand the concept. You know, road work, there's many different ways of road work. And treadmills, when you look at treadmills, each mill is not the same. You got a 13-inch wheel, 14-inch wheel, 15, 16-inch wheel. Why is the front wheel in different sizes? Why is the length of the mill from 4 feet to 5 feet to 6 feet are different? Why is that when you spin it, there's 4 rotations or 5 rotations or 6 rotations? What is the resistance of the mill? Is fast better or slow better? Is a noisy mill better, or is it a quieter mill better? You know, until you understand the concept of the mill itself, that's another subject. When you understand every workout utilization that you've learned, how to master it, understand how it works, then you can apply it to the animal. Some animals don't do certain workouts. You know, like Bill. Bill had a dog named Junior who would never work out at all. And how he did it, he would bounce a ball from the kennel end to the wall and back and forth. He would stand by the side of the kennel. The dog would run back and forth, catapult on the wall, run back and forth. And this is how he worked the dog, with just throwing a ball back and forth, because this dog refused to do any workout.
You know, it's funny. It's funny, not cutting you off. It's funny that you said something about, I see a lot of people, well, I see on the internet a lot of times where people be putting these puppies on, like starting them out young on a treadmill. And to me, I don't have no problem with the treadmill, but to me, the dog as a pup should just learn to stretch his legs out and run naturally. Because it's almost like I compare it to football. You may have a kid that's a real, you know, he's a good football player. He can run fast, you know, running back, whatever. But you put that same kid in track and show him how to run, when he come back that next season as a football player, he already had natural skills, but now we taught him how to run. So now he can get, you know, he can get the maximum when he do step on the field. He really knows how to run. So to me, when you put a puppy on a treadmill earlier, it's best to just let them run free as pups, to be able to stride. And you said it best. You know, when you let a puppy grow up and be a puppy. Don't force an animal to do things the bigger dogs are doing. You want to start them early and stuff like that. You introduce it to them slowly but surely. You know, you have to let the dog, you know, road work to me conquers all, because once the dog is in the field and knows how to walk long distance and exercise, he starts to develop. You know, puppies are at developing stages similar to that of dogs, you know, with schooling and anything else. You know, the maturity is the most important thing. Just because an animal physically looks fit, and just because his mentality is as wild as a bobcat in the woods, don't mean shit. You know, if that dog gets hit, it's like taking a little young kid. He's a great fighter. He can be crazy and wild, and you think he's got potential, but you put him in a ring to spar with Mike Tyson for 2 minutes. As soon as he gets a couple of hits, boom, the kid's fucked up. Right. You know, his whole mindset is fucked up. Why? Because he's not mentally ready for it. People must understand dogs are not mentally ready for certain situations until they reach a certain age. Some dogs don't mature till they're 3 or 4 years old. Then what? Why would you bounce him around when he's a year, 2 years too hard? Just because he looks great don't mean shit. But then when you decide to put him into the performance circle, guess what? He bags out in 20, 30 minutes. He ain't got shit in the gas tank, and he panics because he's never been pushed hard and hit hard. You understand? So maturity has a lot to do with everything. It's what makes a difference in mental and also mental conditioning. Just because you work a dog out, you have to get in the dog's head. You have to mentally condition him to love you, to trust you, to bond with you, because you can control that animal just by smiling and saying things and whispering in his ear. And that dog will be in there all the way to God knows how long you want him to be in there, because he's happy. He's in a good mental state. He's doing it because he wants to show you he loves you. He's doing it because he's a happy animal. One of the worst things I've seen on these dogs is a dog that does not love its owner and is a miserable animal. He does not perform. I've seen a lot of guys sell something that was, you know, a good dog that was a winner, and then